Okay, we are recording. And okay, let me do our introduction here. On behalf of Our Lady of the Lake University and the School of Business and Leadership, I'd like to introduce you to Mr. Brett Piat. Mr. Piat is a 20-plus year internet security veteran. In 2015, he founded Porthcawl Holdings with Mr. Hugh Edwards, and together they raised an equity fund to invest in technology businesses. The following year, Porthcawl purchased Jungle Disk, which Mr. Piat now leads as President and Chief Executive Officer. Most recently, in 2020, Porthcawl launched its third business, Modern Managed IT, where Mr. Piat also serves as board chair. Prior to his involvement with Porthcawl, Mr. Piat led a $100 million plus revenue, 300 plus person SaaS business, software as a service, unit for Rackspace, serving over 75,000 small businesses. In addition, he led several successful acquisitions on the corporate development team at Rackspace. Earlier in his career, Mr. Piat had the opportunity to lead the AT&T managed premises firewall business and helped to create OpenStack. Outside of the office, Mr. Piat enjoys a good meal, live music, and time with his family. He is also actively helping to transform San Antonio into a technology leader through community involvement with TechBlock, Launch SA, Cast Tech, and other outreach activities. It is my pleasure to welcome Mr. Brett Piat as the very first opening keynote speaker for the OWN conference. Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Piat.
Thank you very much for the introduction, and hopefully everyone's made this to grab their lunch. It's unfortunate that we're not here and able to do this in person, so that Our Lady of the Lake can give you a free meal, so that at least you're getting one piece of value out of today's presentation here over the lunch hour. Yeah, the quick bit on my background, in addition to the overall introduction, I'm also the board chair of Catholic Charities for the Archdiocese here in San Antonio. And I'll talk a little bit from that role and perspective, as well as around how COVID has impacted our community and the small businesses inside of it. During today's presentation, since we're not really doing a keynote, you're not all eating lunch directly, or if you are, you can do that quietly in your own home. I will take questions via chat, so if we're talking through and you have anything that you would like to ask, please go ahead and ask it there. If it fits, I will answer it as I'm working through the materials, or I will certainly have enough time at the end of the formal presentation in order to answer all the questions that come on in. So, 2020, was anyone really prepared? So we all sat down and started doing our planning for 2020, probably October, November, December of 2019. Maybe you get a board meeting and you finalize those plans at the start of 2020 and start working along, and then all of a sudden COVID happens. And if you're a mature business, a larger organization or enterprise, you have a business continuity plan in place. Some small businesses have thought through that, and then they think about things like flood, fire, or the tornado you see there, where all the windows got blown out of a high-rise there. That's in downtown Fort Worth. Many of those folks probably had never thought there was going to be a tornado there, but fire and flood, depending on where your building is at, folks have thought through how to deal with those scenarios. They did not think about how to deal with COVID. So everyone was having to move from a proactive situation where they had planned what to do for the year, and they had plans made from a business continuity perspective where they had sat down ahead of time and thought about, if this happens, what are we going to do and how will our business react? Many businesses allowed employees to work from home every once in a while. Almost no companies had tested 100% of their employees working from home all at once. We ran into many different types of technology limits, whether it was software licensing for remote access users, whether it was certain systems were only available on a corporate network and there wasn't even a way to connect to that remotely. So you ended up in a spot where many companies said, you know what, the safe thing to do is send 100% of people home. And then they started to realize limitations around their operations that wouldn't allow for the business to be able to go do that. So how are these different industries impacted? And I'm going to go through a number of examples here on high fixed cost industries. And this is one as you're out working in a business or looking at what industry you're going to go join as you graduate from school. High fixed cost industries have big barriers to entry. You've got to, if you're going to be an airline, you have to buy an own airplane. The drawback to that is if you own those airplanes and you don't have passengers, you still have those high fixed costs and you don't have the revenue and customers coming in order to cover that. As we look through, you can see the big drop there in yellow. That is the full year of 2020 versus the year of red, which is 2019. And we see that big drop. And as you go through and then look back on the left-hand side of the chart, you'll see a line in blue there where we're starting 2021. And we're not at a recovery point yet. That decline here in 2021 looks to be headed down towards the level below kind of the steady state in the back half of 2020. So many folks are saying, well, it's over. We survived 2020. We've got the vaccine coming out. The world is in a new normal. And for many industries and many people, we're not in a spot where everything's going to return to normal yet. That blue line is not headed back towards that red line. So whether you work actually for an airline or then you consider all of the businesses and industries that support that plane flying, all of the food businesses that operate inside the airport, all of the energy businesses that provide the fuel for the planes and the electricity to run the airport, and all of those areas, demand has dropped across the entire spectrum of businesses that support the airline industry. So as you can go through, and from an economic indicator perspective, this is one of the things I look at, and as we walk through some of the subsequent slides, you'll see some other areas where I can look and see what's going on with the number of commercial flights and have an idea how a whole segment of our economy is working, because there are so many things tied into supporting that one passenger being able to get on a plane to go from point A to point B. So hotel occupancy rate, another high fixed cost industry with a massive demand collapse. And this chart shows a few different layouts and where we are on things. And this is important. It goes all the way back to 2009, which was in the middle of the Great Recession. Depending on whether you're a student in high school or in college right now, and getting ready to graduate, you may have been finishing up middle school on your way into high school. Or if you're one of our faculty members, you'll remember that 2009 in a much more vivid manner from what it did for your career and what opportunities were out there, especially for those graduating with accounting degrees and looking to go into finance back in 2009. And so what we see with this COVID pandemic is a drop-off that is below even that Great Recession by a substantial amount. And in the hotel industry, I'll talk about this one in a little bit different way from the airline industry. You see in hotel, it's commercial real estate. In commercial real estate, there's almost always a good amount of debt used. You have a commercial mortgage on a building. So that fixed cost is not just the running and the operating of the hotel, but the fixed cost is the debt service in order to be able to keep that hotel for the owners and not have it foreclosed on by the creditors. And as you look at that average that throughout the year, hotels run in roughly a 60 to 65% average. This chart shows week 1 through week 52 as you go through the full calendar year. And throughout the whole year, things normally run at about a 60 to 65% occupancy rate. Now we're looking at heading through the back half of 2020. They got up to 50% again. Many hotels that were charging lower room rates at that. And this is also an industry aggregate set of numbers, as I've had other conversations with folks to dig into this demand a little bit more. If you have urban downtown hotels that were heavily reliant on convention or business travel, they may be running below 30% occupancy still, where some hotels in areas where people are looking to get away and get out and be able to go see the outdoors are running back up in their normal occupancy rates again. So this macro piece will show how the industry goes as a whole. In a hotel, it doesn't tell the entire story. In the airline industry, everyone's traffic is pretty much down on a passenger level. There isn't an area of strength in passenger air travel. Cargo air travel doing very well, but passenger air travel is just struggling across the board for all airlines. In the hotel industry, the whole average is way down, but there's actually a split going on there. And then in restaurants, very high fixed cost again. You build out a building, you buy a bunch of expensive equipment, you hire a number of fixed staff that you have to have in order to keep the business open and just be able to open your doors each day. You have inventory that spoils very quickly. So if you're unable to estimate and forecast your demand properly, then you have additional costs of not being able to take all the product you bring in and deliver that product out into a revenue generating solution. As we look at this chart here, this shows that kind of through the start of 2021. So this is looking at the end of January through the first week of February here. We're still down 60% or so versus the pre-pandemic 2020. So where we're looking at this vaccine rollout and everyone's saying that we're kind of beyond the pandemic at this point. In the restaurant industry, we are not beyond the pandemic again. And the restaurant industry, very similar to the hotel industry, one summary chart like this does not tell the entire story. With this industry, some quick service restaurants that have mobile applications and delivery capabilities have done very well during the pandemic. So if you are a Domino's Pizza, if you're a Starbucks, if you're a Whataburger here in Texas, many of them have done very well. Chick-fil-A has done very well during the pandemic. And then you go to the other end of the extreme where if you're a restaurant in an urban area, highly reliant on business employment traffic, so people coming for lunch during a work week, people inviting colleagues out to dinner, people doing meetings with business partners and planning. If you have an event space where you rely on folks being able to bring in speakers and talk and do those things as part of your revenue mix for your restaurant, you may still be in a substantial a situation where this minus 60% number, you wish you could get back to that. And then I'm also taking a look at office vacancy rates. So this is one where I thought the data here was very interesting because in general, the conversations I have with other business folks is that Texas has done a solid job weathering COVID, managing to balance health, safety, and the economy. And then you look at the office vacancy rates and you look at those top cities and you see Houston, Dallas, and Fort Worth all up there in the top list of cities from an office vacancy rate perspective. And then the bottom chart on there in gray shows the amount of square footage that is open and vacant. And I think one just to look at where percentages can be a misleading piece sometimes. You don't see New York City on that top list of percentages. When we then go down and look at the raw square footage, you'll see New York City has more than 20 million square feet of office space available right now. And this is one where the office industry is typically very long lease cycle, long construction cycles to build new. So we will see continued capacity coming online in 2021 and 2022 for projects that broke ground in 2018 or 2019 or early 2020. And if this ends up to be a consistent long-term trend, you may see a number of abandoned, partially completed projects that do not even come online because they're going to end up losing their financing prior to full completion and build out. The New York number, that 20 million square feet of vacancy in New York, and I've got a question I'll talk a little bit about right now. It's just on employers saving money there, which is true. I think we'll look at this work from home, work from flex, partial commuting, flex office space, and different working lifestyles going forward post-pandemic. For all of those in the commercial real estate industry, the projects that they've finished designed for a 2019 pre-COVID world may not be what businesses are looking for to occupy today in a post-COVID world, in a post-pandemic world. So that 20 million square feet represents almost $2 billion a year of rental income, and roughly then somewhere in the $20 to $30 billion worth of actual capital construction real estate value. So this is one, if that 20 million square feet doesn't get occupied, that's the $30 billion worth of real estate that's going to go have a diminished value at some level. And we're a little bit at this point unsure where the bottom is for some of these types of projects. So yeah, this work from home thing, all of my employees at the very start, they were like, yes, this is wonderful. We're going to be so excited to work from home all the time. We don't have to commute anymore. We can save that money. This is going to be utopia. And then for those of you attending all day today and listening in on the accounting and finance sessions before here, we heard many stories about that sum up that picture there very clearly. It's that Fridays don't feel like Friday anymore because you're sitting there. You don't have the option necessarily to go out and do activities in the way that you would have before. You've got your desk sitting there. You see another email ding on your phone, and you're like, I guess I should just go back to my desk and work on this next one. And then for those that have children at home, I mean, I think anyone that thought that they could run a school or a daycare and do their day job all at the same time have realized, it turns into scribble. I mean, and I think if any of you are regularly working remotely with groups in meetings, all of us have had a dog, a child, something come in through this that's unexpected, because homes were not designed to be distraction-free workplaces. So it's a really interesting split to see how some folks are enjoying this. Some are not enjoying it. Some have been able to figure out how to manage a schedule and have balance, and others have not. I think we'll see a return in 2021 as we roll out the vaccine, as it becomes safe for groups to come in and gather again, for employees looking to schedule in-person meetings with each other, to work through problems, to brainstorm on new ideas. Working from home at your desk or interacting over Zoom is a wonderful way to be heads down, doing work that you already know how to do as an individual contributor, or working on a team that has already gone through the storming, forming, and norming, where you have established relationships with those coworkers on the team. You know how to work together. You understand the roles and responsibilities of every member of that team. But if you're looking to build a new team, you're looking to learn new skills, whether you are the one learning them or whether you're the one mentoring and coaching or training one of your colleagues, all of those things are much more difficult in a remote world than they are in a live shared office space, where if you're learning a new task, it's much easier and less disruptive to just look across the room, see if someone looks like you could come talk to them about a question you have, versus trying to figure out how to schedule time to go have a meeting where you can then get on a call or a video sharing to go discuss that question you have. I think for businesses that were heavily reliant on in-person and email communication as their way to be successful, they've had to dramatically adapt business processes during this past year, looking for chat systems, whether it's Microsoft Teams, it's Slack, it's a number of different tools out there that allow for more informal ad hoc communications in a distributed environment. For businesses that have not implemented those tools, where you're relying on scheduled meetings and email to communicate and collaborate with employees, I think at this point, I'm not having conversations with anyone that says scheduled meetings and emails are working for me to run a fully remotely managed organization. So for those of you that do get to work from home and you're headed into careers where many of you in finance and accounting will be able to work from home and remotely and virtually, this is a shot of right over in downtown San Antonio by the north end of downtown, just a few miles from the Our Lady of the Lake campus. Many of those in those high fixed cost industries or supporting those high fixed cost industries that were shut down because of the pandemic are not so fortunate. And they've ended up in a place where it's not as simple as just collect the unemployment wages, collect these stimulus checks. If you were working in tourism and hospitality and you had built a long-term career in that industry, or you were working in the airline industry, or you were running a successful event planning business, those businesses allowed you to have a solid career, a very good salary, a very good lifestyle, and no one had planned, as back to my first slide, for a global pandemic shutting down all of those industries, making some of them even illegal to operate. With that, folks do not plan to have a year or 2 years or 3 years of buffers in their savings account. Many of the folks in America can't afford a $500 surprise, let alone being down to a $30,000 a year unemployment level wage for 12 or 18 months while this pandemic goes on and will continue to impact the industries that they operate in. So with this, we've seen many of the organizations step up to help the service and to get an idea on what level of impact this is in our community. And San Antonio, if you look at it as a nation as a whole, we're doing much better than many other communities out there. In places like California, where the shutdowns have been more strict, or in highly dense urban metros like New York City, where people have left the city and are not working there right now, the unemployment rates are above 20% in many cases. So here we're somewhere between 7 and 12%, depending on how you want to look at the math on that. What this has led to is, if you have been following the news, you may have seen the lines at the food bank where San Antonio made national news. Our food pantry that we run for Catholic Charities over on the west side has gone from delivering and serving food to about 10,000 folks, helping them get meals, to delivering. I was just asking our CEO this last week, and I think we got close to delivering 1 million meals to people during this COVID pandemic, going up from delivering 10,000 meals a year. So this has just been a massive, dramatic shift in unplanned expenses. And with those unplanned expenses, people are choosing food or shelter, and that's not a choice that any want to make. You get into this where then maybe people are still able to work in their job. Maybe they can still go to work. They work in a manufacturing facility where the folks are spread out, so you can be safely distanced and working and operating there. But if you have elementary school age children, how do you pack up and leave your house and go to work when the daycares are closed, the schools are closed? So we pivoted at Catholic Charities, turned one of our after-school programs into a virtual school program, where you'll see some of the photos there on the right, where we have one child per table, and we were able to help a number of families be able to continue to work in their jobs through this crisis. But there was certainly not enough space at our facilities to service all of those in need, even with many other organizations stepping up throughout this year to serve and provide. And then we saw others there in the middle, so Madison, and those that were fortunate enough to be able to have food, have shelter, and things of their own, doing creative fundraisers to try to help and participate in their community. And that stuff is very appreciated, and it's grateful. And I think San Antonio, I've been real proud to see as a city how we have treated the others with dignity in these very challenging times. And even our school districts here at the public school level, many realized very quickly that for many elementary and middle and high school age children, that their best quality meals were those meals at school during the day. So they organized meal curbside pickup sites, then eventually went to where they were doing meal delivery to the bus stop for the families, and getting that food out and running those kitchens, because the families were not set up and ready to go to a point where they were going to have to feed everybody 3 meals a day, 7 days a week. Their family had budgeted that part of that budget was the child being able to eat good quality meals while at school throughout the day. So with COVID, kind of what's happened on the business and the economy. So small business has been hit the hardest. And small business owners are all optimists. If you were not an optimist, you would not decide to start your own company, because there are so many challenges in front of you. Even if you look at knowing how to deliver a product to a customer, there's 100 other things about running a business that have nothing to do with delivering your product or service out to your customers. What I've seen looking at payroll data and other metrics from inside of our business, where we serve tens of thousands of small business customers around the globe, folks reduced headcount at the start of the pandemic. Businesses that were struggling to pay their bills in January and February of 2020, before the pandemic started, they went out of business before they could even get the PPP paperwork done, completed, and figured out. That PPP relief was a big, strong stabilizer for small business that did qualify and did get through the paperwork to obtain it through the middle of last year. And then we saw, after that PPP expired, another round of cutbacks that many businesses went through, because that PPP was designed to help for maybe up to 6 months there during a 24-week period. And we've gone much longer than that in the pandemic now. And with that, we now have a second round of PPP coming out. But I think businesses are still struggling, depending on where you are in those industries, to be able to cover payroll or to have the demand to need to bring payrolls back to where you had them before. I think, as I said, on the optimism of small businesses, I think most of them believe by this summer we're going to be back to normal. I wish I was that optimistic right now. Looking at some of the vaccine rollout and where some of the demand data is, we're planning on 2021 to be very similar to 2020 from an operations perspective for us inside of our companies. Continuing to have COVID protocols. We don't believe that all of our customers will have all of their employees vaccinated during this year. And with some of these operational challenges, I think even if your business is an essential service or in healthcare in the front line, where you are able to vaccinate your employees and your family members, it's not going to be out there across the entire economy for the better part of this year. So impacting us in San Antonio even more is that minority businesses were much more likely to be damaged by this pandemic than Caucasian-owned businesses. And this is a few different reasons why here. There's a bunch of data on the screen from SCORE. Go to score.org if you want to learn more about this and look into some of the details here. But the Hispanic-owned businesses tend to have a little bit fewer employees than the white-owned businesses. They tend to be a little bit less well-capitalized, so less money went in at the start. They tend to have less existing relationships with banks for lines of credit or other ways to weather a storm on their balance sheet with working capital. Many of them pay their employees on a weekly basis. They bring in revenue during that week. They collect it from their customers, and they pay their employees much of that revenue each week. So if you don't have some working capital buffer inside of your business, then it's a ripple like COVID impacts you much more than businesses that have some of these working capital buffers. And many of these industries, again, no one had thought that these type of complete shutdowns would happen. So people haven't planned for it. If you owned an auto shop, as an example, you never thought that we were going to all of a sudden see all the cars off the road. So no one's car's breaking down. No one needs new tires. No one needs to get their brakes changed. I mean, the automobile demand has been going up and up and up every year in America for forever. Even if you go back to the 2008, 2009 financial crisis, maybe people stopped buying new cars a little bit, but car maintenance and auto shops and all of those things kept running and kept operating. And you can look across many different types of businesses and segments in the industry, and this was something that nobody could have predicted or planned for what we saw throughout this year from a demand shift in these businesses. Yeah, I know we've got a comment on the chat as well. Yeah, you look at people supporting office buildings and office infrastructure. So whether it's doing maintenance on the mechanical plant inside there, whether it's doing providing cleaning and janitorial services for the business, whether it's doing tenant build out and remodeling as new people take leases or they upgrade their office space, or all of those supporting industries around that professional office space are all shut down. And many of those contracts were in a month-to-month cases. So while the landlord may still be collecting rent for a lease, because that lease is in business normally in a minimum of a 3-year, but many of them are 5, 7, or 10 years, they may still be collecting rent from there, but they've cut down the catering contract, they've cut down the cleaning service, they've cut down on all sorts of activities, and that the revenue and demand went away immediately. So how has this impacted big tech? Well, and the technology industry as a whole, they've done very well. I think if you looked at Amazon before the pandemic, and you look at Amazon now, there were already more folks in with Amazon Prime memberships in America, even pre-pandemic, than any other subscription service. Now, at where we are through the pandemic, nearly every household in America has at least one household member that has an Amazon Prime subscription at this point. And this is these large businesses that have a strong balance sheet, and they have capability to capitalize on these changes and opportunities. So Amazon invested very heavily during 2020 in order to be able to absorb the increased demand. Amazon increased wages for all of their employees, all the way down to their very beginning entry level, your first day working in a warehouse. Everyone got pay raises at Amazon in 2020, so they were able to fill those roles, not have vacancies, and be able to service the demand. Because it's one, to be able to get customers in. It's another to be able to then actually have a growth opportunity and be able to hire the people that you need to execute on it. So the large companies were very well set up to run through this, and it's not just Amazon on the demand to retail. As you look at the streaming services, the Netflix and Disney Plus has more than made up for the lost revenue from the theme parks in Disney, which is pretty amazing for a company where you would look at Disney and go, this is a very asset-heavy brand. The theme parks are a giant portion of their business and their revenue stream, and that surge in demand on the digital and tech-heavy side of their business in 2020 more than made up for the losses on the other side. But if you are a SeaWorld and you're not a gigantic business, SeaWorld is a large business, but it's not gigantic like Disney. It's not as diversified. There's no opportunity for SeaWorld to figure out how to pivot into a digital streaming platform during a pandemic. Six Flags, the same thing. That business is around the rides and the in-park experience, and those are going to be significantly limited for the foreseeable future. So I think, and then if you look at the tech-enabled jobs and industries, this is one where we've seen much more of a split in this COVID pandemic and workforce shift than we did during the great financial crisis, the 2008 Lehman bankruptcy that tipped that and got things going there for those couple of years. That impacted a lot of college graduate level folks with degrees in finance and accounting, just like many of you in the audience today. This COVID crisis was most likely to impact folks with a high school education, maybe not even a high school degree, folks with trade skills, and really the most vulnerable, lowest wage earning folks in our population, those that are the least likely to have savings piled up. And it's really been challenging and unfortunate for them, because this is also not one where if you worked in an industry there, and again, many of those you could build a very solid career. If you are a waiter at a restaurant downtown that serves high-end business clientele, you can be making $50,000, $70,000, $90,000 a year. You can't go pivot into another job to maintain that lifestyle. And even if you go back to school, you go into a training program, we're talking months or years in order for you to get the education you need, and then months or years of experience in a new industry to get back to where you were. So for many that were not in the tech industry or tech-enabled careers, this crisis has massively impacted their life, and it's not just going to be over after we're all vaccinated until the demand comes back across all of these industries, if it does come back. So, what were we doing this last year? During this pandemic, we had known that small businesses needed technology, and we've been working to broaden the set of services that we deliver out to technology and to them. And we were planning on taking Modern Managed IT out, raising money for that, launching it in the first quarter of 2020. And with the COVID pandemic, we hit pause on it. We still delivered some services behind the scenes. We continued to bootstrap the business, but we wanted to wait until we saw what was really going to happen with the economy at a reasonable level of clarity. How was this really going to impact small businesses? And would there be a demand in this new world for small business technology? It turns out there still was, and we kind of persevered through that middle of 2020, and then launched the business in September. They've had to do things very differently than they thought in their original business plan. We were looking at building out modern managed IT store locations that may look like an Apple store, where folks could come in and see what modern technology looks like. They can interact with our staff. All of that stuff is paused and on hold. Even going out to do sales meetings with new prospective clients, look at their technology and talk to them about how things could change, that all became different. In order to be able to go do service calls for customers to help them tech enable their employees, to help them make this transition and shift to a 100% work from home workforce. All of the things that we had thought we had figured out about how this business is going to work when we launched, all had to be reworked, rethought, refactored so that we could get the business out and launched running the way it is today. So I've got 3 tips for leadership here to wrap up during a crisis. And a crisis is any significant event that you didn't have a plan for. And no one had a plan for a pandemic. And I'll say no one with an asterisk. Yes, there were a few businesses out there that had a pandemic plan and a 100% work from home plan and all of those things in place. Not very many of them. Jungle just had, luckily, a 100% work from home plan in our business continuity because we ran one large office for all of our employees. If that building were to burn down, we all had to be able to work from home. So our business continuity plan included the ability for us to go 100% work from home, and we did that early in March. So with a crisis, the first step is just to keep calm. And from a leadership perspective, you've got to give folks the belief that they'll get through this, even if you don't believe it really behind the scenes. Sometimes as a leader, you're going to have to take your personal insecurities and those things and bury them down inside a little bit and project a level of realistic confidence. You shouldn't ever get in a spot where you're lying to folks or you're telling them a fantasy tale, but calm and realistic confidence and belief that we will get through this. And then, so tip 1 is use a framework like OODA or something else. So what this means is observe, get in, collect the data, orient yourself to the situation, understand what's going on, then make a clear and calm decision, and then act on it. If you just get a fire that pops up because of the crisis and you start playing whack-a-mole, moving into tip number 2, you're going to end up making decisions you have to change frequently. And if you're having to change those decisions frequently, then folks are going to lose that calm confidence that you know how to lead them through the crisis that you're dealing with. So we made the decision to go 100% work from home back in March. And then over the summer, we had a lot of employees saying, hey, are we going to go back into the office? And I said, not yet. I'm not convinced that this pandemic is over, even though at one point in Texas, we were down well below 5% active cases on the testing. Everything looked great. And many did decide to go back into the office and then decided to then have to turn around and pack and send everybody home again with the rise that we saw through the back half of 2020. So make these clear decisions that you will not have to change frequently and give the folks some stability and confidence, because there are going to be many other things in their life that are not stable and confident. Like none of us have known what's been going on with our school for our children, with our daycare. How are things working with our parents or our grandparents? What can they do? What can't they do? We may have had trips and vacations scheduled that needed to get changed. We may have had college graduation parties that were scheduled that had to be changed during last year. All of these life events, weddings, many different things that folks were looking at to go through. They had uncertainty in their life. And if you're, as a leader and employer on the business side, adding more uncertainty to them, you're going to make their life harder and they're going to make them more anxious. We're going to have some of the things that you heard in the presentations earlier today, depression and just stress levels to an unmanageable point. And then the third is listen to your managers, listen to your employees, make the decisions in a way where you're making it with a framework that allows for some flexibility, because one size will not fit all. If you have children at home, you might do better if you're an accountant to work from 10 p.m. until 4 a.m. while the kids are asleep. And then maybe you'll sleep some during the day while you have a partner that is up and working and juggling the kids. So it just depends on how you're going to be able to handle the situation as an individual. As a leader, you need to ideally set up frameworks with some flexibility and options to allow your employees to be productive, to allow them to meet the goals to deliver your products and services out to your customers still, because that then allows at least that baseline of stability of everyone gets to keep their job, customers can get to continue receiving the services they expected from your business. And with that, I'll wrap up. And if folks have any more questions, happy to take those. I'm looking at and reading the chat a little bit. I don't necessarily see anything else up there right now that we haven't talked about. So if you do have one, please feel free to ask. And if not, thank you all very much for hanging with me here through your lunch hour today. If you would like a copy of the presentation, you can email me, Brett at Fourth Call Holdings there, and I will send you a copy of the presentation. And if you want to call me, this is one where folks are like, you can't give your phone number out to anybody anymore. Sure you can. That's my cell phone number there. If you've got a good reason to pick up the phone and call, whether you wanted to get involved volunteering and helping with Catholic Charities, you have questions about technology business, feel free to reach out and engage in that conversation.
Mr. Piat, I want to thank you. Many thanks for that really terrific overview of the effects of the pandemic on the economy, on key industries, from all of the negative shocks that we've been experiencing, as well as the positive contributions of the Catholic Charities and what's going on with big tech. We do have a couple of minutes remaining, so if anyone has any questions, please feel free to submit those via the chat. Or also, if you're able to unmute yourselves, I think you may not be able to do that. And this session has been recorded as well, so we will be posting all of these. And if you'd like to watch them over again or share them with others. Okay. All right. So thank you very much, Mr. Piat.
Absolutely.
We appreciate having you.
A pleasure.
Keynote speaker.
And I look forward at some point in the future to be able to do this in person again.
And we look forward to having you in the future, hopefully in person as well. Okay, so I just want to let everyone know that we have Mr. Jim Perschbach, who's going to join us next week as our keynote speaker for the closing. And our next session in management starts at 12:30. Okay, so hope to see you all in the continuing sessions. Thank you.